but the crescendo of the music just really draws you in and encapsulates you to just hear it as well. And uh, its debut album looks certain, and we hope to have him on our show as well, where he can talk about his body of work and especially the three tracks that he like to bring on a desert island. We always like to do that on Off the Record Q&A. So yeah, that's Noah Dillon and Alpine there. So we're just gonna keep it in Australia, and we're gonna take it now to Jenna Rose Bruce, and she's an up and coming artist hailing from Melbourne also, and she's very similar in vein to Mazzy Star and to Julia Jacklin, who also hails from Australia, and her music and melodies are just so nice and just such beautiful music that I'm gonna play it right now. And this is her latest track from her, and it's gonna be off her upcoming album called Can't Make You Love Me, and it's out on June 28th. And we're gonna keep playing Jenna Rose Bruce until the moment her album is dropped, and then some. So here you go. Here's Jenna Rose Bruce. So earlier I chatted to Lexi Vega and gave her questions, and I put her to the test where I gave her questions and she had to answer them in an audio. Being the logistics of it all, she's in LA, I'm in Spain. It's better to do it this way, where she recorded herself answering questions which I gave her. And they were all about her body of work, how she is as an artist, along with some quirky questions along the way. So here it is for you. This is Off the Record Q&A featuring Mini Trees.
Hi, this is Lexi with Mini Trees, and you're listening to Shuffle House. I grew up in a pretty musical family. My dad was a session drummer for a long time, and my mom was a singer in a pop jazz fusion band. So since when I was a baby, I was, in the studio, going to shows and concerts, hanging out with musicians. So I just sort of grew up around it, and I think it was a pretty young age where I started to be inspired to write my own music, and it started with playing drums and got into playing electric guitar a little bit, and then sort of I think around my teens is when I started to write my own music, and it kind of just makes sense, I think, just having always been surrounded by really musical people, that I would eventually want to start doing it myself. Thanks so much. Feels really good and really exciting to have the EP out. I've been working hard at it for almost the last year. And in terms of drawing inspiration, I would say the different themes that I kind of touch on throughout the EP are things that have just sort of been floating around in my head for probably the last 3 to 4 years. Basically from the time that I, was in college and kind of graduated and moved back home. And I think that time in your life, just as a young adult, you do a lot of growing up and you change a lot, and you're sort of kind of thrown into the real world, I guess. And so I think for me, as a teenager, I think when I looked at the world, I thought there was a lot of certainty, and I thought that I really understood how it all worked, and I understood who I was, and that those kind of things would just never really be challenged. And so, which is, a pretty naive way to think, but I think being a young person, being a teenager, that's just sort of how it goes. So a lot of the EP covers just sort of being faced with the reality that your life can change a lot, and you can change a lot, and you may not really understand who you are anymore, and you may lose relationships over it, and that's kind of just a natural part of growing up, I think. And so, there are themes of, heartbreak and grief and loss, but I think at the end of the day, I tried to also focus on some positives as well, and that, self-discovery, even though it can be hard in the process, can also be really liberating, and you find new people who accept you for who you are, and so it's a good process, but I think that it's a challenging one. So as a songwriter, I tend to draw from more melancholy moments in my past or present, and so I think that there's a little bit more of an emphasis on that, but at the same time tried to have a kind of a balanced view of the last few years of my life. And then the creative process for me, or I guess the songwriting process, usually starts, well, it can kind of start in a handful of different ways. Sometimes I'm just like driving and I think of something and I record a quick voice memo of it and then come back to it later and start writing a song around it. Or other times I just sit on my computer and just kind of play around until something sticks and there's something I can work with. And then when I have sort of the makings of a song or a complete song that I'm excited about, then I take it to the studio with my friend John Joseph, who produced the EP, and the two of us sort of work together to kind of solidify the arrangements and record the different tracks, and that's sort of where it gets taken to the next level. So that's pretty much how the songwriting process went for each song on the EP, and then beyond that, gets mixed, mastered, and yeah, there it is. So Study Me was one of the first songs that I wrote as I was writing this EP, and it was kind of the first song I'd ever written that had more of a positive spin to it, and it, felt upbeat, felt fun. So I started calling it the Happy Jam because I just hadn't really written anything like that before. But essentially it's about being in relationship with somebody who you realize you could be your full self with, somebody who knows you and kind of knows your good sides, knows your bad sides, and accepts you regardless. And so especially since that time in my life, I felt like there weren't a ton of people who I could be my true self with. It was that much more meaningful to me to be with somebody who I knew I was safe with. So it's kind of like a song that's where I'm excited about that. I'm celebrating that. But at the same time, there's sort of a hint of like doubt and a hint of fear because I'm recognizing something that's really good, and with that comes these like fears that it's not going to last, or I'm going to do something to mess it up. And so there's always kind of like a little hint of doubt, and I think that's just sort of my thought process. When something really good is happening, at the back of my mind there's always like, is this going to last? Like, is this really happening? And I think writing about it is a way for me to sort of like deal with it and process it. So this is actually a pretty tough question to answer, I think, because music is so subjective, and it sometimes you don't really even know how to explain why a certain song affects you a certain way or why you connect with it. I think generally if someone likes